This episode is brought to you by Global X. Since 2008, Global X ETFs has been committed to empowering investors with unexplored, intelligent solutions. Global X specializes in exchange-traded funds that offer exposure to the artificial intelligence ecosystem, including themes like data centers, robotics, semiconductors, and cloud computing. To learn more about Global X's entire suite of ETFs, from covered calls, fixed income, emerging markets, and more, visit globalxetfs.com.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest, the last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the...
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your...
windshield wipers. eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying... just beautiful...
Whatever you love, find it on eBay. eBay. Things people love.
Welcome to Nature Back, Tom.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you.
Tell us in a few words, what is FarmKind?
Yeah, sure. So FarmKind, we are an organization that help people who care about animals and care about the planet to really play a key role in tackling factory farming, which is a major issue when it comes to both animal suffering, but also the health of our planet. And so we do this by finding some really amazing charities that are doing incredible work. We work with experts to kind of identify some of the best charities working on this particular issue. And then we help recommend those charities to people as like really great places if you're interested in donating to tackle this issue, which is one of the most powerful things actually that you can do to make a difference for animals and on this issue.
Factory farming. That was a relatively new phrase for me. What do you guys actually mean by that? I would assume it means just big farms, but
yeah. So what we mean really by factory farming is the industrial agriculture. So we're not talking about, someone who's got maybe a few chickens in their back garden or like a few cows or sheep in a field. What we're talking about is really that kind of industrialized version of animal agriculture, which typically means having a very large number of animals, potentially thousands of animals, particularly in the case of poultry, and often keeping them indoors, usually for their entire lives. But certainly for like a significant, in the case of cows, often sort of they might spend a little bit of time outside in a field and then they'll be brought in to kind of be really fed up and sort of have their growth increase. So it's really a style of agriculture that's focused primarily on producing the most animal products possible for the least number of inputs. And I say it that way because I don't like to use the word efficiency, because I think particularly when it comes to the climate, this is an incredibly inefficient process. But it's like, as a company, how can you take the fewest inputs and turn that into the most animal products? And that's really what we're talking about here.
What was for you the kind of wake up moment, or when did you understand that this is a cause worth fighting for?
Yeah, so my kind of route into this was mainly through animal welfare, actually. So I remember quite vividly. I was sitting on a tube train as an underground train in London, next to my partner, and there was a little advert up above us that was sort of like, I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was something around like animals are suffering in factory farms. Like this is bad. And my partner started talking to me about it, and my initial reaction was actually quite. I got quite defensive and upset quite quickly, and I thought, well, this is for the government to deal with. Like, really, yeah, of course it's bad, but like we need different policies. Like, I don't have anything to do with this. And I reflected on this later, and I thought, why did I get so upset so quickly about this? And I thought maybe this is because actually I feel like maybe the way that I'm not taking this issue seriously enough, I guess. And so that was kind of my route into then starting to learn about this issue and think about how I could, given that I felt like I was pretending like I didn't care, but I actually did really care about this issue. What could I do about that?
I assume that over the years you've seen probably some rather drastic farms, right?
Yeah, and I mean, anyone, if you so want to, it's very easy to see this stuff. You can find on YouTube, for example. There are plenty of documentaries and things like this where you can see what goes on farms. And I think we often like to think like, oh, this must be the minority. Like these like really horrible images, like they're not most of farming. But the reality is actually that a lot of these things are pretty common. So in the USA, for example, an estimate so that about 99% of the animal products that a person eats in the USA are from industrial farms, so from factory farms. And so things like overcrowding of animals, keeping them in really unclean and diseased conditions. These are extremely common. Slaughterhouses, for example, they're primarily set up to try to process as many animals as possible, as quickly as possible, not to give the animals a pain-free or what we might call a humane death. And so some of it can be really quite, I won't go into it too much, but like some of it can be really quite graphic and quite upsetting to watch, for sure.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Amazon for all your gifting needs.
Hey, Atlanta, Apple is open for small business. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. With privacy and security built in on all devices, it's easy for you to protect your customers' data. And if you need hardware or software support, you'll get advice from business experts at no cost whatsoever. So you can focus more on the soup du jour and less on, the other stuff. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/small business or visit an Apple store to learn more.
You mentioned the link between farming and climate. I mean, kind of most people who know something about the climate change probably know that the kind of industrial agriculture is probably a big part of it. But how would you define that link? How important is that kind of farming in fighting the climate challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is really crucial, and it's surprising, I think, given how much of an impact animal agriculture has on the climate, that we don't talk about this more. So in total, animal agriculture is estimated to be contributing around 14 to 19% of global emissions. Depends on how it's quite difficult to analyze, partly because a lot of the emissions directly from animals are methane, and obviously, like, it depends on what scale of time, because methane operates in the atmosphere very differently to carbon dioxide. It depends upon like what scale of time you look at and like how you do your calculations as to like the exact number you get. But it is like whatever kind of way you cut the data, it is a significant driver. It is more, for example, a larger contributor than cars and direct emissions from cars. So it's a really quite significant emitter, and this comes down to partly emissions directly from animals. So cows and sheep in particular expel a lot of methane from their burping and other things like this from their digestive process, essentially. But it's not just that; it's also a particularly deforestation is a big issue. So with industrialized animal agriculture, so factory farming, almost all of the food that those animals are eaten is brought in from somewhere else. And you want to, if you're running one of these farms, you want to feed those animals on the most kind of protein-rich food that you can, because you want them to grow quickly so that you can kill them quickly and sell their meat. So if you're a poultry farmer, you're probably feeding them on soy, for example. If you are a cow farmer, you're probably feeding them on corn. And so what happens is both to create pasture land for cows that are grown outside, raised outside, and also to create these crops, a huge amount of deforestation is being driven by animal agriculture. In fact, we feed the overwhelming majority of the crops that we produce in the world to animals, not to humans. Right. So when we think, sometimes people say like, oh, you shouldn't like eat plants because it's destroying the rainforest. It's not the vegans who are eating all the soy with their tofu. It's actually it's mainly the chickens. And also there's issues around things like fertilizer, so the nitrogen that's put onto cropland. As again, like although obviously humans are eating some of this, most of the crops that we're growing are actually being fed to animals, and then we're eating the animals, which is a much less efficient way of getting food, and indeed even less efficient way of getting protein. So, despite the fact that the vast majority of crops are being fed to animals, animal agriculture produces only about, I think it's like 37% of our total protein, and about 17% of our 17% of our total calories. So it's really quite an inefficient way to produce sort of healthy food for humans.
Mm. What are the solutions? I mean, if we all, I don't know, have to become vegans by tomorrow, that probably will not happen. But in a bigger picture scale, what solutions could be there?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up the V word, because I think what we really want to emphasize is that you don't need to change your diet to be part of the solution. You can if you want to. That's one way to have an impact, but it is by no means the only way, and probably not even the biggest way that you can make a difference to this issue. So, if we start there, right? If you go from, say, eating like the typical omnivore diet to eating no animals at all, what you've done is let's say all the animals that you would have eaten don't get farmed. So you've reduced like the number of, you've effectively saved like 33 chickens from going through farming and about 1/10 of a cow each year, right? So this is like, it's not nothing, obviously, but it's not that many animals actually. It has some, you're definitely having some impact, but it's a relatively small one. If you were to say to donate to some of the best charities that are doing really good work in this space to offset the climate and the animal impacts of your diet, you'd need to donate around about $23 a month to have approximately the same amount of impact as that change of diet. So it's actually like quite easy to do the same amount of good, roughly speaking, by, for example, donating. Other things you could look at are, I think you should be particularly thinking about how we can influence our politicians, because the answer, going back to my sort of train story, actually the answer is ultimately for politicians and for companies to change how they're producing food and the regulations, but they won't do that unless we as society put the pressure on them to do it. At the moment, they think what we want is cheap meat, and so there's very little incentive for politicians to make the regulations more difficult for and make these farms pay for the pollution and the environmental damage they're doing, because they think that we as society will ultimately punish them at the ballot box for that. So we need to tell them that that's not the case, and that actually we really want them to hold these companies to account for the damage that they're doing to the environment, and that we want pro sustainability and pro planet regulations in this space. So I think that's a really simple thing that all of us can do, and something I would recommend. I think the most powerful thing you can do is to donate to charities that are working on this issue, because you can just, for even relatively small amounts of money, have a really quite profound impact on this issue, on factory farming.
How did you guys, or who has come up with that 23 number?
Yeah, so we calculated this ourselves. We've built a calculator actually. So if you go to compassioncalculator.org, you can play around with essentially put in your own diet, like what sort of products you eat, and you can see how many animals are affected by your diet and how much money you would need to donate in order to, if you like, offset the impact of your diet. So you can see for yourself. The way that we get this is the charities that we recommend. they all are extremely transparent about how much money it costs to do the amount of good that they do. So we can see really quite precisely exactly how many dollars it costs to, for example, free a chicken from a battery cage. And so this allows us to go, okay, if you donate this amount of money, we can really clearly tell you this is the good that will do. And that's pretty exciting. And it allows us to do these kinds of things, like say, okay, if you want to like offset your diet, this is what that would cost you.
So in Western world, basically scrapping one steak a month and putting that money into it will be win-win for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
We will add the link to the calculator, of course, to the show notes, so everybody can go and do their own math. No need to scroll back the recording and check it out there. Looking at the FarmKind's future, what are the next kind of big milestones for you guys?
Yeah, so we have these charities that we recommend. We've worked with a number of experts in the field, so people who make really large grants to organizations working on this issue. An evaluation organization called Animal Charity Evaluators, who are like specialists in trying to identify what good charities, particularly in the space of animal issues, are. And so we have this list of 6 organizations that we think are really good places to donate if you care about this issue. They're going to use your money very wisely. You can see exactly what the how much good you're doing, and you can do a lot of good by donating to these guys. Our mission now really is to take that out to people, to try and try to talk to people, engage them. In particular, what we want to say is that you don't have to change your diet to make a big impact in this space, because I think this idea, diet change for many people is just not something that they're prepared to do. It's not practical often for people. You've got a family you've got to feed, you've got your friends and family. It might not be easy to get good plant-based foods in your area, and so it's just not practical for everybody. And so the big thing we want to say is like, don't let that put you off being part of caring about the impact about factory farming, and don't let that put you off saying, yeah, this is a problem and I want to be part of the solution, because there are a bunch of other things you can do. And so that's the message that we're trying to get out to people.
With charities, they often have some kind of borders between countries. You talked about kind of advising, kind of suggesting 6 good charities you guys have vetted and so on. Are they, UK based? Are they US based? Do they take international donations? How's kind of differentiated is that world, or split?
Yeah, so the charities we recommend work all around the world, actually. So we have examples of organizations that work in America. So the Humane League is a really good example of this. But we also recommend charities that specifically work in areas of the world that are much less much more neglected by this space. So if you look at over the world, where factory farming is growing fastest is in places like Asia and Latin America and in Africa. More than 90% of the charitable donations going into trying to tackle the problems with factory farming are going to North America and Europe. So this is a real problem. And so one of the charities we work with is an organization called Sinergia Animal, and they specifically work in Asia and in Latin America on some of these issues. So we try to make sure that we've got charities that cover across the world, as well as covering everything from developing new foods that are more sustainable for the planet and are going to make, give us a future food system that's kinder to both animals and the planet, and also ways to tackle the kind of problem right now of like, how do we make this system less destructive today. And so that's why we have kind of a combination of campaigns working on pressuring companies now to reform their practices, and also supporting kind of the future of the food system.
Meaningless stuff. Why do we gift so much meaningless stuff? Tired of generic gifts and hollow trends? Shutterfly allows you to create meaningful photo gifts for your family and friends. Whether it's a cozy fleece blanket for grandma, a stunning canvas print for mom, or a mug to make dad smile. Enjoy 40% off with code MAKE40 at Shutterfly.com and make something meaningful this year. See site for more details.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Being based in Europe, one has to ask, how does the EU farming policies go together with, fight against industrial farming? This must be the big bad enemy for you guys.
Yeah, so I think the picture in Europe is interesting because globally, Europe is relatively good on these issues, and there are moves in Europe to do some really quite progressive things and some really impressive pieces of work. But the picture is definitely mixed. So you obviously have countries within the European Union that have an extremely strong farming lobby, and so I think we can't say that that everything is terrible, but also there's a lot of work to go, and the structure of Europe does to some degree make it harder for some. It's hard for individual countries within Europe to make really really good progress sometimes because of the single market and things like this. So I think there's, but some of the stuff that I think is particularly exciting is countries in Europe who are dedicating money to supporting like a fair plant-based transition for farmers. So money to going to farmers who are using animals at the moment in their agricultural processes to find more sustainable ways to farm. That I think is very exciting because we don't want to although I think we need to move beyond industrial, beyond factory farming, we want to do that in a way that is fair for farmers too, right? And I also think the support for the for things like cultivated meat and alternative proteins is also a really positive thing. And then there are some smaller pieces of work, some quite exciting work on using sexing of eggs so sexing chicks when they're still in the egg. So because the egg industry currently, basically if you hatch a male chick, they're useless to the egg industry. So the chickens we use in meat production and in eggs are completely different breeds of chicken. And so typically these male chicks are killed in their sort of first hours of life. There is now the technology to essentially identify whether it's a male or female when they're still in the egg. So when they're not conscious, that you can expect that like you're not. It's more like an abortion than killing the animal. And so that's a way to kind of eliminate a huge amount of additional suffering and in that, and that's quite exciting. So that work is being done in places like Germany, for example. So yeah, so I think there's a long way to go in Europe, but actually there's also some quite some stuff we should be encouraging and some good projects going on too.
We covered the board, kind of the fragmentation of the space. We covered a little bit about the kind of Europe's internal challenges, maybe in this big game. In some of the episodes, we have had some really interesting organizations which are doing amazing work just recently we had the rare.org in one of the episodes where they're talking about what they do in the coastal villages, in the kind of small Pacific islands, changing the world there. So a lot of amazing work is actually going on around the world.
Yeah, I listened to the rare episode. Actually, I really enjoyed it. Behavioral economics and that kind of world of is fascinating to me. And so yeah, I really enjoyed that episode. And yeah, I think there is a lot of good stuff going on. I think one of the things with this issue, I think this is probably true of climate more broadly, is when we care about it, or when we can see that almost everyone can see that this is a problem, right? Like there are very few people who will stand up and tell you, I think factory farming is great. But often we avoid thinking about it, and we avoid thinking about these issues because we just feel like there is nothing we can do about it. So I think in that episode with on Rare, you talked about Don't Look Up, the movie, right? And he had some criticisms of that. And one of them was like, it just seems like there's nothing anyone in that movie can do about the problem that's coming along. And that's very disempowering. And it can make, we can think, well, if there's nothing I can do about this, I might as well just not pay attention and just try and get on with my life. And so one of the things I think is really important for us in the climate space and also in the animal space as well is to say, no, look, actually, there's a lot of really great work that's being done. We are making some progress. In the animal, the fight to end factory farming has about $200 million of donations a year. It's tackling an industry that is worth about $2.3 trillion. So massive disparity. And yet, over the last sort of 10 years, we've gone from about 4% of hens who make eggs living outside of cages, to about 40% in Europe, in the USA. So a massive change, 10 times as many over a period of just 10 years. So we are making some really, that's one example of really specific, really great progress that's being made. And despite the fact that this industry is 1,000 times as big and fights against us on every front. So, and the work that Rare is doing is another great example of making things better. And so I think it's really important to highlight that there is progress we can make. We are making progress sometimes in quite sort of specific places, but with more resources, with more people getting involved in these things, with more money to scale up programs that are doing really good work. Actually, this problem is very tractable. It's not, there's no sense in which we can't do anything about this. We know some of the things we need to do. We've just got to kind of scale those things up and get on with the work.
In one of the episodes, somebody said beautifully that nature doesn't have its PR office, which is so true when you're talking about the situation of this amount of money fighting the industry of this large. It's basically the similar dilemma, right?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, right? Animals, they can't talk right now. And they can't advocate for themselves. And sometimes,
depends, of course, on the animal. I mean, the dog next to me is definitely talking to me.
This is true. I have cats, and one of them, Luna, she tells me her life story every day. Like she has a lot to say. But they can't engage in the political process in the way that groups of marginalized people often can. And it's important that when we think about sort of climate issues and how it affects certain sections of the population and things, we can at least elevate those voices and say like give them an opportunity to tell their stories and show how climate change is affecting them. In animals, we have to do that work as well for the animals.
Absolutely.
And it makes it that a little bit harder, but it also means that that is important work to be done so that their perspective and their experiences don't get lost.
Cool. I think that's a lovely positive note to wrap up this discussion. Thanks for your time, Tom.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it. It was great.
Blinds.com Cyber Monday Last Chance is happening now. Don't miss out on up to 45% off site-wide. A Blinds.com design expert can help you make the perfect selection on your schedule. We can handle everything from measure to your whole home installed for one low cost. With over 25 million windows covered, Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings. Save up to 45% site-wide, plus a free professional measure right now at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
If you like the show, subscribe and leave a good rating on the podcast platform of your choice. It would mean a world to us.
Welcome to another season of Crypto with Kamal on Electricast. Where we explore the future of money and how digital assets are reshaping our world. I'm your host, Kamal Hubbard. Web3 is not just a buzzword, it's a movement that empowers you, your family, and community. So if you're passionate about financial technology or just want to stay ahead of the curve, Make sure to tune in and subscribe to Crypto with Kamal wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Hi, everyone. I'm Geraldine Glass, a leader in the field of music as medicine, and I'm excited to share with you my newest release of healing sound, Pentatonic Visions, with Chris Scholler and Electrocast Records. Immerse yourself in ethereal realms where the harmonies of nature, tribal rhythms, and soundscapes blend with the crystal singing bowls. It's out now, streaming on all platforms.
Electrocast.